Currently, the most viewed video on this channel is called Different Approaches to Sculpting a Head. If you haven't seen that one yet, then you can watch the full video here. Today I wanted to make a sequel of sorts and dive deeper into the whole subject of sculpting human heads. To do so, we will sculpt a generic male, female and baby's heads. Along the way, we will find out the commonalities and differences between all three of them. Let's see if we can beat the views on the old video. For that I'll need your help. Any interaction with the video is greatly appreciated. If you like it, then hit the like button and share it with your friends. If you hate it, then let me know in the comments down below what I can do to improve. Alright, enough talking, let's start sculpting. First up, our base head. These days, if I need to sculpt a head, I'm mostly using the Lamia method approach. It is the third method I discuss in the Different Approaches to Sculpting a Head video. I referred to it there as the academic approach because it was new to me and I had no idea that the origins of it lay with Andrew Loomis. I originally spied this method on Stacker's Sculpting channel and I will link the original video in the description if you want to check it out. It's super informative. A lot of what I'm going to say in this video I learned directly from his channel, so please check him out and give him some love. The Loomis method approach involves sculpting a base head with strong planes before progressing into any further detail. While sculpting a base head first may seem like extra work, it actually really helps to speed things up down the line. Also, once you created the base, you can reuse it from project to project. There is no need to start from scratch every single time, although I think it is a good practice to do that until you internalize all the information. I still tend to make a new one every time, unless speed is of an essence. We'll start with a sphere. Our heads are pretty round, but the skull is actually quite flat at the temples. So let's start by chopping the sides off to account for that. From here we will split the side of the head into 4 equal parts. Let's pull the lowest front quarter down. This will be the jaw. Now let's establish our main landmarks for the hairline, eyebrows, nose and chin. To do that we'll split the front of the head into 3 equal parts. Next, let's find the position of the eyes and corners of the mouth. To do that, we'll draw 2 lines from the middle of each brow line down to the bottom of the jaw. Now, halfway between the nose line and the chin, we will draw another line. This will be the center of the sculpture's mouth, and the width of the mouth will be limited by the previous 2 lines we have drawn. Next, we want to shave off the sides of the jaw so it recedes back at an angle. Just like this. Now let's define the plane on which the nose and the eyes will sit. It will be at an angle, deeper under the brow and shallow towards the base of the nose, something like this. It's a good time to add the nose. I will do that by masking the relevant area and using the move brush to pull out the geometry. Then I will add a little bit of smoothing and sharpening to get it to be more shapely. Moving on to the eyes, I will dig in a bit with my clay tubes brush to mimic the eye sockets. And then I will put in the volumes for the eyeballs. While we're at it, let's also shape the eyebrows a bit and take some volume away from the temples. The last bit on the face left to block out is of course the mouth. The mouth area is largely formed by the lips. You can think of the top lip as the tapered prism. The bottom lip has a similar shape and it is tucked under the top one. Don't forget to check things from the profile view. Currently my chin is tucked in way too far. Let's fix that. At this stage I try to think of things as a series of planes. If you need a good inspiration and a reference for this, check out Azarov's Planar head. It does a wonderful job at breaking down a human face into simple planes. Let's define the zygomatic arch and the sphenoid bone. These give quite a bit of shape to the face. A quick pass to refine the established details and cut down some sharp angles. With the face blocked in, it is a good time to add the neck. Just like we did with the nose, let's mask and extrude. Now let's refine the shape of the skull and the way that it connects with the neck. Keep subtly tweaking the proportions if you notice something is off. Block in the sternocleidomastoid muscle. It is one of the big volumes of the neck. You can see that I'm tweaking things again. Sculpting is an iterative process, and even when I try to keep on track, I tend to jump from thing to thing when I notice something is wrong. I just noticed that I made the neck way too long. Looking at the front of our sculpture, the base of the neck should be roughly 1/3 of the length of the face down, and then it will recede from there to the back diagonally. The face and the neck are now blocked in, so it's time to add the ears. These days I find that the quickest way to add ears is by using the curved tubes brush. Keeping it low poly, let's define the main overall shape of the ear. Looking at our sculpture from the side, the top of the ear should align with the eyebrows and the bottom of it with the base of the nose. Separate the back part which connects to the head from the helix. Now I will unmask and redynamesh to merge the ear to the head and add some more polygons to work with. Let's refine the secondary volumes. Think of the ear as a combination of the C and Y shapes. The C is wrapping around the Y. We're nearly done with the base, all of the main components are there. It is just time to go over the whole thing and do final tweaks to the shapes and refine the volumes and planes. You can see me doing just that now, tweaking the zygomatic arch again a little bit, refining the planes of the lips and the chin, changing the volumes on the cheek and the jaw, adding a bit of the volume to the larynx on the neck. This is what is often known as Adam's apple. It's a bit of cartilage above the vocal box, and contrary to popular belief, both male and female necks actually have those, just with a different degrees of protrusion. Now I'm adding some detail to the eyes and ears and refining the nose. And here we now have our base head that we can use as a starting point for any further sculpting. Once you get here, you won most of the battle. You have all of the main proportions and planes of an average human head. Let's move on to sculpt the male head. I will duplicate the subtool and work from that to keep the base intact for comparison and for the following sculpts. Turning this base into a generic male head shouldn't take long. In fact, we're already nearly there. We just need to refine features and add some subtlety. I will start by evening out any sharp transitions that I spot. A low intensity clay tubes brush is a perfect tool for that. Under the lower lip I will add some extra volume. The muscles in this area make a soft W shape if you're looking at it from the front. Moving on to the eyes, I'll block in some detail like the lower eyelid. While in this area, I'll add a bit of definition for the eyebrow arches and smooth out the transitions between the forehead and the temple planes. I'll narrow out the bridge of the nose a bit too. I want to add a little bit of volume to the top eyelid and the supraorbital area. Now it's time to refine the lower part of the nose. I'm fleshing out the nostrils and making the tip a little bit more narrow. Next I'm adding some volumes to the nasolabial fold. This fold is usually more prominent in older people. In younger faces it will be smoothed out by the underlying fat. Time to reassess and tweak the volumes and continue smoothing the transitions between the planes. Moving on to the neck now, I'm refining the connection to the skull and the overall proportions. Next up, I'm smoothing out the zygomatic arch and bringing the frontal bone in slightly at the sides. Now I'm going through all the features again, touching up detail and adding smaller volumes. Like this one at the sides of the mouth called the node. This is where a lot of muscles meet up. At this point it's all about very subtle changes, refining everything that we blocked in already, rather than adding anything drastically new. Like here, I'm touching up the nasolabial folds again. It is important to remember that the eyeballs are spherical in shape, so I'm going to make sure that I give them enough convexity and they're not just flat. Now that I've tweaked them, I'm going to retouch the eyelids and add a little bit of room for the tear duct. Adding in some eyebrows, small thing but adds a lot of character and expression. Some more subtle touches to the smaller volumes. Tweaking the shape for the muscles of the neck and making the Adam's apple more pronounced. The ears feel a bit left out and faceted. Let's refine it to be on par with the rest of the head. Don't forget to check the overall proportions from the front and the side. I like to drop the model to the canvas to check it simultaneously from multiple angles. You can do it by pressing Shift and S. This will create a 2D snapshot of the model. You can then move the 3D model elsewhere on the canvas and rotate it to a different angle. When you want to clear the canvas, you can do so by pressing Ctrl and N. I feel that with the heads, the more important view is the profile view. So if you see anything that feels wrong to you, try to fix it in the profile view first. You can see me doing just that right now and tweaking the overall proportions. I'm pretty happy with how this looks, so we're going to leave it here and move on to the female head. For this one, we will start again from our base sculpt and we will see what we would do differently to the male head. Again, I'll want to smooth out the planar transitions and refine the large shapes into smaller volumes. First, let's make the nose bridge a little bit thinner and tuck in the sides. I will bring the jaw up a bit and make the neck thinner. I'll smooth out the transitions for the temples and make the forehead a bit rounder. Now I'm shaving off some volume from the supraorbital area, below the eyebrow, as this will give more space for the eyes, making them appear larger. On average, female faces tend to have finer features and softer transitions than their male counterparts. Of course, this is a generalization, but since we're sculpting generic heads, we will stick to the generic assumptions. The mouth on the female face would normally be less wide than on a male, and the lips would be a bit plumper. The jaw should be a lot less angular, and also some volume will be taken away, making it smaller. The chin's forward protrusion will largely stay the same, but we will shave some volume off from the sides, making it less wide and more pointy. I feel that the nose still needs to be thinner and smaller. The planar transitions will need to be much softer and subtler on a female face, so work with the smooth and low intensity clay tubes brushes when tackling this and changing volumes. Let's soften the volume of the cartilage around vocal box on the neck. I'm continuing to take off the volume from the sides of the chin. Now I'm smoothing out some of the large volumes of the head. Taking off some extra volume from the neck again. Remember that we're going for an overall thinner, more refined look. I'm putting in some indication for the sternocleidomastoid muscle on the neck. Next, I'll put a bit of detail for the upper eyelid and the tear duct area, while in this area I will also reduce the volume of the cheekbones slightly. Now would be a good time to smooth out the area around the mouth and to add a little bit more definition for the lips. It's starting to look more feminine already, but these massive meaty ears aren't helping, so let's refine them too. Remember the C and Y shapes? Let's push them closer to the head. That's looking better. Don't forget the subtle W-shaped volume under the lower lip. The corners of the mouth are currently pushed down too low, so I'll raise them a tad. Quick comparison to our male head by jumping to the other subtool. Yeah, I think she's on a good track. Let's refine the nose. Again, we will put in some smaller shapes like the nostrils and the alar lobule, but notice that we're making them a lot subtler than on the male counterpart. Softer transitions in the planes on the side of her face too. Getting back to the eyes, it may be a good idea to block in some eyelashes. No need to sculpt every single eyelash, just an indication of their volume will already help visually. Next, I'll add the lower lid and a tear duct. Again, remember that the eyeballs are spheres, so they have to have the right convexity from the profile view. Let's refine the eyelid and add some supraorbital fat pad volume. At this point I want to touch up the ears and make them a little bit smaller. Now let's make the jaw a bit smaller as well. Time to put in some subtle nasolabial fold and some volume from the malar fat pad. Careful to not overdo either. I'll make the neck thinner still and the skull box a bit smaller. Keep going over the sculpt and smoothing the transitions. At this point again I am assessing the sculpture from the profile view and tweaking proportions that seem off to me. Bringing down the volume of the zygomatic arch, making the nose a touch shorter, raising the jaw, chiseling away some of the volume around the orbital cavities and making the zygomatic process in the brow arches softer. Refining the shape of the eyes and adding some eyebrows. Even though she's currently bald, she looks already pretty feminine. That's a good sign. Adding the hair will take it even further. For the sake of speed, I will just sculpt a simple hairdo of a hair tied into a tight bun. For something more elaborate we would have benefited from using a separate subtool, but in this case let's just add it with some quick clay tubes directly onto our sculpture. When sculpting the hair, remember that you don't need to sculpt every single one. Your aim is to convey the flow of strands with big volumes. Don't overcomplicate things, something this simple already will give a good approximation of the hair shape. Quick fix to the eyes. As you can see, I find it hard keeping on track. If I spot something I want to change, I just do it in the moment. Back to the hair, I did make the bun as a separate subtool in the end, and here I'm blocking in the flow of the strands a bit better at the back of the head. Touch up in the front too. Some more small fixes to the proportions and a quick comparison between our generic male and female heads. I think we did a pretty decent job. Just some small refinements on the ears and we're done. As a bonus, let's sculpt the baby's head. This wasn't my original plan for this video, but one of the comments asked for it. So here we go. This one is rather experimental, so I don't have a clear sequence of steps, it's a bit of an improvisation. Nonetheless, hopefully there will be some pointers here that you can take with you for the overall process. Again, we'll start with our trusty base head. Although the proportions will change quite significantly, at least we'll get some decent reference for the planes of the head. We'll start by raising the jaw again, making it smaller. Also, let's shorten the nose. Noses and ears apparently grow all our lives, so we need to give them some room for that. Let's add some volume to the cheeks to make them a bit chubbier. Babies do tend to have quite a lot of facial fat. Just like with the female face, we want to get rid of all the hard edges. Softness is the key here. I will also take some volume of the brow arches, making more room for the eyes. Babies tend to have big eyes. Soften that jaw right up. Add more volume under the lips, remember the W, and smooth out the chin. Make the lower part of the face smaller yet again, and add some more fat. Time to make those ears smaller as well. Bring the temples in a little bit. Now I'll start smoothing out my brush marks too. Babies usually have very soft and smooth skin, so it doesn't help having all these brush marks on the sculpture. Let's tuck the chin in on the sides. Let's make the neck shorter. I'm gonna keep going and smoothing out the transitions on the skin. Be careful when you're smoothing things not to turn it into a totally shapeless form. Still keep the main head planes intact. If you do go overboard, add some detail back in. I'll add a quick definition for the upper and lower eyelids. We will return to them later, but now I'm jumping back to smoothing some of the forms. Let's further shorten that neck. Smooth out the zygomatic arch. I'll bring the cheeks out a bit and tuck the neck back in and then smooth it out. Filling in a little bit of fat above the eyelids. Tweaking the shape of the skull to make it smaller, amending the overall proportions. Making the cheeks fuller and the forehead rounder. Keep checking the model from the profile view. Now that I'm happier with the overall proportions, I want to get back to fixing the eyes. I wasn't happy with the previous attempt, so I'll get rid of all the detail and start again. Don't be afraid to do this, often it's quicker than trying to fix something that clearly doesn't work, and it's a good way to practice your shapes. You can see how I'm jumping back and forth between working on the specific features and overall volumes. This helps me to look at it with fresh eyes rather than getting caught up working on one detail. Some minor tweaks here and there. And now onto the neck, adding some more volume and some folds that babies often have. Keep assessing the sculpture by rotating it around and try changing the light direction. This will help you see the mistakes you might otherwise miss. I just noticed that the skull is severely deformed at the back. Generally the skull would be wider towards the back, so let's fix it now. Now I'm back on some smaller details. Build those volumes carefully with a combination of low intensity clay tubes and smooth brushes. Let's give some attention to the mouth and the chin area. I keep trying to return to the eye area, but I get distracted by other issues. Here I am adding a bit more volume for the malar fat pad and stripping off some of the volume from the temples. And I'll yet again make the whole lower part of the face smaller. Okay, it's finally time I got back on those eyes. As always, I like to define the top eyelid first, and then give some space for the tear duct. Then comes the lower lid. Just make sure it ends up being tucked under the top lid a bit. Next, let's make sure that the eyeball shape is appropriately convex. Now I'm going to move around the sculpt and fine-tune things. We'll tweak shapes slightly and add detail where I feel it's necessary. There's not really any specific method here, I'm just looking at the model from different angles and amending where it feels right. Overall the idea is the same as with the female face, small incremental refinements of what we already have here, making sure that the shapes and volumes flow nicely into each other. Adding some eyebrows now for expression and getting back onto tweaking the eye shape. Here I explore a few different variations before I settle on the final form. As a final step, I once again look at the head from all the views and do another pass at proportions. Now that the head is more clean, it's easier for me to see what needs to be changed. You might notice that I sometimes go back and forward in my history stack. Whenever I do tweaks that I'm not sure about, it helps me to compare the before and after state and decide whether I want to commit to it. And here we are, side by side, male, female and baby face, created from the same base head that we made at the start. Hope this video was useful to you and will come in handy whenever you're sculpting heads yourself.